welcome to day 17 of Chronological Bible in 1 year. We are in chapter 45, about halfway through the chapter, and we start off with Pharaoh inviting Jacob to Egypt. And remember, this is the beginning of the 400 years where the Israelites are in captivity, if you want to look at it that way, but 400 years out of the land of Canaan. All of them come out of the land of Canaan so that the sins of the Hittites, the Amorites, all of the Canaanites, all of that runs its course. And actually during that time, God does some things to punish them, but it's to allow the sin to run its course, and then they get to go back and annihilate everybody who's there because they've turned their backs on God. And the sin has definitely reached up to heaven. So let's kind of go through this, and I'll point out those things. Verse 18, then get your father and all of your families and return here to me. I will give you the very best land in Egypt. Okay, so God already promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that he would bless those who bless Israel, Jacob. Okay, so Pharaoh is already blessing them, and it was all through Joseph, and because of what God did to Joseph in his life that put him there and put him in a great position of power. In verse 22, and he gave each of them new clothes, but to Benjamin he gave 5 changes of clothes and 300 pieces of silver. Very interesting that Benjamin is getting the most of everything, and I'm sure that's because Joseph was kept from his youngest brother, who was actually Rachel's other son. So Joseph and Benjamin were the only sons of Rachel. Then we get in chapter 46, and here's another important point. Verse 2, during the night God spoke to him in a vision. Jacob, Jacob, he called. Here I am, Jacob. I am God, the God of your father. The voice said, do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make your family into a great nation. I will go with you down to Egypt, and I will bring you back again. You will die in Egypt, but Joseph will be with you to close your eyes. So Jacob is getting another vision from God. And at this point, we start to see God slowly starting to step away as far as being in the presence of people physically. It still happens here and there, but not as much as it did early on. Adam and Eve walked with God. God showed up and wrestled with Jacob. Jacob was in Canaan, and now we have God showing up in visions to Joseph and also to Jacob. So they took everything with them from Canaan. It says everything. They also took all their livestock and all the personal belongings they had acquired in the land of Canaan. So Jacob and his entire family went to Egypt, sons and grandsons, daughters and granddaughters, all of his descendants, everything that was Israel left the land of Canaan on purpose. Okay, so that's the beginning of chapter 46. Verse 26, the total number of Jacob's direct descendants, there were more, who went with him were 66. In addition, Joseph had 2 sons who were born in Egypt. So altogether, there were 70 members of Jacob's family in the land of Egypt. And they, in turn, became a great nation. 33, then he said, when Pharaoh calls for you, asks you about your occupation, you must tell him, we are your servants who have raised livestock all our lives as our ancestors have always done. When you tell him this, he will let you live in the region of Goshen, for the Egyptians despise shepherds. Okay, so here Joseph has learned from his father to be very shrewd. It's like, wait a second, Goshen is really a great plot of land. Let's tell Pharaoh that this is what you do. You're a bunch of shepherds, and he'll give you this land because he doesn't want to be around you. So they got the land of Goshen, and they just multiplied like crazy. Verse 9 of chapter 47, Jacob replied, I have traveled this earth for 130 hard years, but my life has been short compared to the life of my ancestors. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. There's key points throughout this that makes me think that Pharaoh still recognizes that there is a God. Now, there may be multiple gods at this time in Egypt, but Pharaoh recognizes God. Now, a Pharaoh comes into power that doesn't recognize God, doesn't recognize who the Israelites are or what Joseph has done, and enslaves them. But that's later on. And they settle in the land of Ramses. Verse 15, when the people of Egypt and Canaan ran out of money, all the Egyptians came to Joseph. And this is how they become captives and slaves in the land that they were welcomed into. So all the people, Egyptians as well, our money is gone, they cried, but please give us food or we will die before our very eyes. So Joseph says, bring me your livestock. So he gave them food in exchange for the livestock. So Joseph gains all the livestock for Pharaoh. And then that runs out. Verse 18, but that year ended, and the next year came again and said, we cannot hide the truth from you, my Lord. Our money is gone, all our livestock and cattle are yours. We have nothing to give but our bodies and our land. Why should we die before us? Buy us and our land in exchange for food. We offer our land and ourselves as slaves to Pharaoh. Just give us grain so we may live and not die. And so the land does not become empty and desolate. So Joseph bought all the land. In verse 21, as for the people, he made them all slaves from one end of Egypt to the other. And they weren't even in the land that long and immediately become slaves. Now, they weren't treated harshly. Everybody was slaves. The Egyptians were slaves to Pharaoh, and so were the Hebrews. And they absolutely hated the Hebrews. So when a Pharaoh comes into power, pretty soon, he immediately says, we don't like you people. You're taking over our land. You're multiplying. And why should we be slaves alongside you guys? So that happens later on. And that ends day 17. So that's a little foreshadowing of what's to come. And we really start to get into it. And then again, there's going to be a breath here where we start to talk about some individual things in the family tree. So until then, we'll see you tomorrow.